Ever feel like you're stuck? Like just doing the same unproductive stuff day after day.
Yeah.
I think we've all been there. But what if I told you those tiny little routines we have, the ones that seem insignificant, could be the key to some pretty big changes?
Interesting.
Today we're going deep on Atomic Habits by James Clear to figure out how those small changes can actually get big results.
It's funny how we always want those big, immediate transformations.
Yeah.
We forget about consistency. We get so focused on the finish line, we forget about the small things we do every day that actually get us there. And that's atomic habits, basically.
Small changes
Yeah.
done consistently that add up over time.
Exactly.
It's like that saying, Rome wasn't built in a day, right?
Right.
But how do we actually use that in our own lives? It's not always easy to think about the long game.
Well, Clear gives this great analogy in the book. Imagine you're an ice sculptor chipping away at this huge block of ice.
Okay.
And for a long time, nothing seems to be happening. You don't see progress.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, with one final hit, the ice breaks and this amazing sculpture is revealed. That's what compounding is like.
Oh, wow.
It's about trusting the process, those small, consistent actions, even when you don't see the results right away.
That's such a cool visual.
Right.
So you're working, chipping away day after day, and then boom, you have a breakthrough. It makes you realize when you're feeling stuck, all those little things you're doing are adding up.
Absolutely. And to understand how those small changes actually add up, we need to talk about the habit loop.
Okay.
Clear breaks habit formation into 4 stages: cue, craving, response, and reward.
The habit loop. Okay. So what is the habit loop exactly?
Imagine your morning coffee routine.
Okay.
The cue could be smelling the coffee brewing,
Okay.
which makes you crave that caffeine boost.
Yeah.
Your response is actually making and drinking the coffee.
Mm.
And the reward is that feeling of alertness, that satisfaction you get.
Makes sense.
Understanding this loop is really important because it gives us a way to hack our habits.
So it's like a cycle. A trigger makes you want something, which leads to an action, and then the reward makes you do the cycle all over again.
Exactly.
But how do we use that to actually change our habits?
Well, that's where Clear's 4 laws of behavior change come in. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. Think of them like tools for building good habits and getting rid of the bad ones.
Okay, I like a good toolkit.
Yeah.
So let's go through these laws.
Yeah.
Let's start with make it obvious. How do we make a habit obvious?
It's about changing those cues we were just talking about. Let's say you want to meditate every morning.
Okay.
Instead of putting your meditation cushion away somewhere, put it right in the middle of your living room floor
Okay.
so you can't miss it. When the cue is right there in front of you, you're more likely to actually do it.
It's like you're setting up your environment to help you succeed.
Exactly.
Out of sight, out of mind, right?
Right.
It really shows how much our surroundings affect what we do.
Yeah, and Clear talks about something called implementation intentions.
Okay.
It's like taking that idea one step further. It's not just about making the cue obvious, but actually deciding when and where you're going to do it.
Oh,
So, for example, you could say, after I brush my teeth, I'll meditate for 5 minutes in the living room. When you have a specific plan like that, you're not guessing, and it's harder to make excuses.
yeah, you're committing to it before you even really have to think about it.
Exactly.
No more arguing with yourself at the last minute.
Right.
Okay, so we've made it obvious.
Yeah.
Now, how do we make it attractive?
Yeah.
I feel like this is where it gets a little tricky.
This is where we use something called temptation bundling.
Okay.
It's basically pairing something you want to do with something you need to do.
Oh, interesting.
Like only allowing yourself to watch your favorite show while you're on the treadmill.
So I can finally justify watching too much TV by saying I'm building habits.
Exactly.
I like it. But realistically, sometimes we're just not motivated. Like, even thinking about putting on workout clothes feels hard. What do we do when it's like that?
That's an important point. Claire says that instead of relying on feeling motivated, we should just make the habit really easy.
Okay.
He calls it reducing friction.
Interesting. So instead of trying to do a whole hour at the gym on day one, I should maybe just focus on putting my workout clothes on.
That's a great example. That's what the 2-minute rule is. You break down any new habit into something you can do in 2 minutes, something so easy you can't say no.
Okay.
And you'd be surprised how often just starting is the hardest part.
Yeah, it's like that saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Exactly.
Or a single step in your workout gear. Okay, I'm starting to see how these laws all work together. We've made it obvious, attractive, and easy. What about the last one? Make it satisfying.
Our brains naturally want to feel good and avoid pain.
Yeah.
That's where the reward stage of the habit loop is so important. When we feel good immediately after doing something, we want to do it again.
That makes sense.
This is especially important for habits where you don't see results right away.
Like working out and waiting to see results.
Yeah.
So if I'm trying to create a workout routine, instead of waiting weeks to see changes, I could reward myself with a smoothie after each workout.
That's a great idea.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a physical reward, though. It could be feeling accomplished, checking off a box on your habit tracker, or just that feeling of knowing you're working towards something.
Speaking of habit trackers, why are those so popular now? They're everywhere.
Because they give us a visual representation of our progress.
Yeah.
Which our brains love because we want to feel satisfied immediately. It's like leveling up in a video game, but in real life.
Yeah.
Even the act of tracking itself can become something you look forward to, which strengthens that habit loop.
Okay, so we've gone through all 4 laws, but I'm curious. What about when we get stuck?
That's a great question.
How do we stay motivated when we hit a wall?
That's where the Goldilocks rule comes in.
Okay.
It's about finding the right level of difficulty to stay engaged. If a habit is too easy, we get bored. If it's too hard, we get discouraged. But if it's just challenging enough to keep us interested but still doable, that's when it works.
So it's about finding the middle ground, pushing ourselves without being unrealistic.
Exactly. Remember how you were saying you tried to learn Italian overnight?
Oh, yeah.
That was way too much too soon.
Yeah, it was.
But when you started doing just 15 minutes a day, you actually made progress.
That's so true. I never thought about it like that.
Right.
It's about those small wins that keep you going without being overwhelming.
Exactly. And as those small wins start to add up, something interesting happens.
What's that?
Our sense of self starts to change.
Okay.
We start to see ourselves as the type of person who actually does these positive things.
So it's like those, what would your role model here do bracelets, but instead it's our actions that define who we are.
Yeah, it's like our everyday actions show who we want to be. Exactly. Clear says it really well. He says, every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. It's not about being perfect, it's about doing it regularly. And when you start doing these small things, how you see yourself starts to change. You start to see yourself as a writer or runner, whatever you're building through those habits.
It's that feeling of accomplishment makes you want to keep going.
Yeah.
It's amazing how small changes lead to us becoming different people.
Right.
Which then makes us want to keep up those good habits. It shows how much power we have to shape our lives.
I agree. And the best part is you don't have to wait for some big inspiration. You can start small today with just one little thing.
1% better each day. It feels much easier when you say it like that.
Right.
And as we've been talking about, those little things,
Yeah.
when you do them consistently, can make really big changes. This has been so interesting. We've talked about the power of atomic habits, those 4 laws of behavior change, and how connecting our habits with who we want to be is important.
It's been great talking about these ideas with you.
And for everyone listening, we hope this has given you some tools and a new way of thinking about how small changes can make a huge difference in your life.
Remember, you're in control of your habits. And as we've learned, those habits end up shaping who you become.
So as we wrap up, here's something to think about. What one small habit, one tiny action can you start doing today to become 1% better?
Focus on those small wins. Be consistent. And watch as those atomic habits transform your life.
Until next time, happy habit building.
It's like this. You pair something you want to do with something you have to do.
Oh, so I can finally justify watching so much TV. I like where this is going.
It's called temptation bundling.
Okay, I can get behind that.
Right.
But let's be real. Sometimes we're just not, motivated enough.
Sure.
Sometimes even thinking about putting on workout clothes is too much. What do we do then?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Clear says we shouldn't focus so much on feeling motivated.
Right.
Instead, just make the habit super easy to do.
Okay.
He calls it reducing friction.
Reducing friction. Okay.
Like, instead of trying to do a whole hour at the gym on the first day, maybe just focus on putting your workout clothes on.
Right.
That's actually the 2-minute rule. You make any new habit into something you can do in 2 minutes so easy you can't say no.
So it's like a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Exactly.
Or like we said, a single step in your workout clothes. I'm really starting to see how these laws work together. We've made it obvious, we've made it something we want to do, and we've made it easy.
Yeah.
What about that last one? Make it satisfying.
Well, our brains want to feel good and avoid feeling bad.
Right. Makes sense.
That's where the reward part of the habit loop is important. When we feel good right after doing something, we want to do it again.
I get that.
This is especially important when we're talking about habits where we don't see the results right away.
Like working out and wanting to see a difference.
Exactly.
So going back to the workout example, instead of waiting weeks to see any changes, I could reward myself with a smoothie after.
Exactly.
Okay, I like it.
It doesn't have to be a physical reward like that, though.
Oh.
It could be the feeling of getting something done, checking off your habit tracker, or even just feeling good because you know you're working towards your goals.
That makes sense. Speaking of habit trackers, those are everywhere these days.
They are.
What makes them so effective?
Well, it's because they give us something visual that shows our progress.
Okay.
And our brains like that because we get that instant gratification.
Makes sense.
It's like leveling up in a video game, but it's your real life.
I like that.
And then even just the act of updating it can become something you enjoy, which just makes that habit loop even stronger.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So we've covered all 4 laws.
We have.
But what about those times when we just, I don't know, we hit a wall?
Yeah.
Like, how do we stay motivated over a long time?
That's where we have to talk about the Goldilocks rule. The Goldilocks rule for forming habits.
Okay.
It's about finding that sweet spot, that perfect level of difficulty. Because if a habit is too easy, you get bored.
Right.
And if it's too hard, you get discouraged. But when it's hard enough to keep you interested but not impossible, that's when the magic happens.
So it's about finding a balance.
Yeah.
Pushing yourself, but also being realistic, right?
Exactly. Remember you were talking about how you tried to learn Italian overnight?
Oh, yeah.
That was definitely too much, too soon.
It really was.
But then you decided to just do 15 minutes a day, and you actually made progress that way.
That's true. I never thought about it like that.
Right.
It's all about those small wins that add up without overwhelming you.
Exactly. And as those small wins start to add up, something really cool starts to happen.
Like what?
The way you see yourself starts to change.
Oh, interesting.
You start to see yourself as the type of person who actually does these good things.
You mean like instead of wearing what would your role model here do bracelet, our actions show who we are?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like our everyday actions are like voting for the person we want to become.
Exactly. Clear says this so well. He says, every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. It's not about being perfect or anything. It's about being consistent. And when you start doing these small things consistently, how you see yourself changes.
Yeah.
You start to think of yourself as a writer or a runner or whatever you're building with these habits.
And that feeling of accomplishment makes you want to keep going.
It really does.
So it's like this whole cycle of small changes turn into us changing who we are, which makes us want to keep up those good habits. It's crazy how much power we have to shape our own lives.
It really is. And the coolest part is you don't have to wait for like a bolt of lightning or something.
Right.
You can start small, like today, just one little thing.
1% better each day. I like the sound of that.
Right. It's not so overwhelming.
Yeah, it feels much less scary that way.
Exactly. And like we've been talking about, those little things, when you do them over and over, can make really big changes.
It's amazing. This has been so interesting. We talked about how powerful atomic habits are and those 4 laws of behavior change.
Yeah.
And how important it is to make sure our habits match up with the kind of person we want to be.
It's been great chatting with you about this stuff.
And for everyone listening, I hope this is giving you some ideas and a new way to think about how small changes can make a big difference in your life.
Don't forget, you have the control to change your habits.
You really do.
And like we learned, those habits shape who you are in the end.
So to wrap things up, here's something to think about. What's one small habit, one tiny thing you can start doing today to be 1% better?
Yeah, focus on those small wins, keep at it, and watch as those atomic habits change your life.
Until next time, happy habit building.